My name is Robert David Steele. I'm a former Marine Corps infantry officer, former spy for the United States of America, and I am the champion for open source everything engineering, which will lift the 5 billion poor at 10% of the cost of the failed Western economic paradigm.
All right. What is the main issue now you think you are following right now?
Well, I think it's a combination of cryptocurrency, a post-Amazon, post-Google internet that cannot be manipulated, and extending open source everything engineering to the entire world, starting in the Middle East, so as to create peace. We basically have got to stop wars and we've got to stop waste.
There have been always kind of wars in the Middle East, and some wars are really questionable why these wars are going on, and as a result, whole country was destroyed, such as Iraq. What do you think the reason for that, and what is the background?
Although I recognize the book by Peter Dale Scott on the deep state, I am the foremost spokesperson calling out the deep state. All wars are bankers' wars. All wars are about making a profit for the 1% by consuming the 99%. Iraq was a bankers' war. All wars also have a very strong Zionist component. Israel is doing everything it can to destroy the Middle East, including Syria. It has stolen the Golan Heights from Syria, which have oil under them, and it has stolen water from Jordan for the last 30 or 40 years. One of the things that open source everything engineering does is it educates publics. I have recently been published in the Russian International Affairs Council website to the effect that the American public is the center of gravity for peace. Right now, all U.S. media, including what we fondly call the crap news network, CNN, are lying to the American public. It is absolutely essential that we create a truth channel. And unfortunately, Russia Today and Press TV are not doing the job. We need a truth channel that can explain the truth to the public about every threat, starting with poverty and disease and environmental degradation, and every policy from agriculture to water. Everything we're being told today is a lie. Banks lie, governments lie, corporations lie, religions lie. We need to connect the public to the truth on every topic.
You mentioned the Zionist and Israel as trying to destroy the Middle East and Syria now. Could you please elaborate on that?
I'd be glad to elaborate on that. Let me also point out that Zionism has been destroying the United States of America. I have written a relatively famous article now called Zionism in America, 7 Strikes and Counting. Since that article was published, and it starts with the USS Liberty, at least another 5 strikes have been documented by other people. The American public, God bless Donald Trump, is now very, very aware that Zionism, which is not Judaism, Zionists bad, Jews good. Zionism is the enemy. The deep state is the enemy. Banks are the enemy. I believe the American public is now ready to throw Zionists out of the United States of America. Let me give you just 2 examples that have recently come to public attention. There is legislation before Congress that makes it a felony, a major crime, to criticize Israel and call for a boycott of Israel. Every member of Congress who has co-sponsored that legislation is likely to lose the next election. People will no longer tolerate putting Israel first. The second major example, we have 23 states in the United States that will not give citizens disaster relief or a contract with the state unless they sign a loyalty pledge to Israel, which is to say they sign a pledge that says they have never boycotted Israel, they will never boycott Israel in the future. This is Israel first, not America first, across 23 states. These are the kinds of things that all Americans are now starting to understand. So I believe that there is a major need for an educational push toward the American public. We need to all agree that Zionism is the enemy.
So-called Arab Spring, where Israel stands here, and America, of course.
I hope Israel stands right behind Netanyahu, who's about to go to jail and come out dead. Netanyahu's days are numbered, and that's a good thing. I believe that Netanyahu has been blackmailing Arnon Milchan in New York City, and that it wasn't bribery from Milchan to Netanyahu, it was actually blackmail from Netanyahu to Arnon Milchan. I believe Netanyahu's days are numbered, and I believe he is going to go to jail. And I believe that in the United States of America, you are going to see a sharp reduction of Zionist influence. Donald Trump, in my humble opinion, is not actually captured by the Zionists. He's playing chess with the Zionists.
How?
When Donald Trump said that the embassy would move to Jerusalem, he knew that was not possible. Among other things, Jerusalem is not part of Israel. Jerusalem, and Henry Seidman has written very ably on this, Jerusalem was explicitly excluded from the land of Israel by the United Nations agreement that enabled Israel to be formed. It is technically and legally impossible to move the United States embassy to Jerusalem, and Donald Trump and Rex Tillerson knew that. That was a play to get everybody angry at Israel, and it worked. Israel is arming and training the Kurds in Syria and the Kurds on the borders of Iraq and Iran. Israel is very much behind creating Kurdistan. It is probably a good thing for Kurdistan to exist eventually, but it must be done in a way that leaves Turkey happy. It is not something that the United States can impose by fiat. Israel is also funding false flag operations. They funded the sarin gas false flag attack by the White Helmets. That was organized by General Herbert McMaster, whom I consider a traitor, in partnership with Senator John McCain, another traitor, and former CIA Director John Brennan, who is probably a paid Saudi Arabian agent and is also a traitor. I think Donald Trump knows all of this. He's keeping his enemies close. The bottom line here is Israel is trying to manipulate the United States into putting 150,000 American soldiers into Lebanon and Syria, and it is absolutely imperative that the American public be educated so that they refuse to allow this to happen.
Netanyahu's days are numbered, and then Israel days are numbered, do you mean?
No. When I say Netanyahu's days are numbered, I think Netanyahu is finally going to go to jail, and that's a good thing. But I also want to say to people that they need to understand that many of my colleagues in the Mossad and many of my colleagues in the Israeli government all hate Netanyahu. They hate what is being done to the Palestinians, the genociding of the Palestinians. I believe that most Israelis are good people trapped in a bad system. And one of the reasons that Netanyahu needs to go to jail is so that people understand that the Zionist policy is not the policy of the people of Israel, nor is it the policy of the people of the United States of America. Israel's days are not numbered, but I do agree with Shlomo Sand, who talks about the invention of the land of Israel and the invention of the Jewish religion. There are a lot of lies in Israel's history, to include the fact that Israel was not there before Palestine. Gandhi said it clearly. Palestine is to the French, is to the Palestinians as France is to the French. We need to push the Zionists back to Tel Aviv. I would like to see Gaza and Jericho linked in a Palestinian land, and I would like to see Jerusalem become an international city at the same time that we take diplomatic immunity away from the Vatican. There's no reason for the Catholic Church to have diplomatic status. I'm at the very beginning of studying the roots of religion, but I'm reading a very, very good book now that suggests that the Roman Catholic religion was actually created by Caesar. It was a way for Rome to manipulate the masses. The turn the other cheek and render unto Caesar is essentially the world's first major propaganda operation to convert a whole bunch of people into anti-Semitic obedient servants of the Roman Empire. Why would you put the Catholic Church in Rome if it was supposedly the enemy of the Roman Empire? I think, in fact, it was a servant of the Roman Empire. Now, Judaism is in some ways an invented religion with three major sects. The Chabad supremacist cult left Germany in first-class train compartments escorted by the Abwehr. They were given the royalty treatment by Hitler, and they set up base in the United States. You have the Ashkenazi Jews, who are the most virulent, negative portion of the Jews, and they're also not Semitic. They're actually from the Khazars, from Eastern Europe. And then finally, you have the American progressive and reform Jews, the majority of the Jews. One of Netanyahu's strikes is he just told the American reform and progressive Jews they could piss off, that the Orthodox Ashkenazi Jews owned Jerusalem and every Jew had to pay obedience to the Ashkenazi Jews. I don't think so.
How do you expect the future of the Middle East? Now, do you expect more wars, more destruction? Now in Yemen there is ongoing war, and the Gulf countries are boycotting Qatar, and who knows where the next problem is going to be. And how could the solution be created?
I do have a solution. Okay, good. The future of the Middle East, in many ways, depends on defeating Zionism and keeping the United States out of the Middle East. I am heartbroken. I've been to Lebanon several times, and it used to be the Paris of the Middle East. I like Lebanon very much. But I think the public needs to understand that the United States, as Martin Luther King said, is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. We are the ones who are creating wars and terrorism every single day, to include drone assassinations that murder 98% innocents. I think the future of the Middle East is bright because I believe that Putin, Xi Jinping, and Donald Trump have an entente. I believe that these three men understand that their generals are dangerous. And I believe that eventually we will see a world at peace that integrates my ideas about how to lift the 5 billion poor with open source everything engineering. I know how to give every Somali a 2-story cinder block house with free energy, unlimited desalinated water, and a little aquaponics farm for $500 per person paid once. This is knowledge that is being repressed by governments that are corrupt, because these kinds of innovations do not profit the banks, they only profit the people. So let me say in conclusion that I believe that Russia, Turkey, and Iran need to create a multinational decision support center, an open source agency based in Istanbul, which is a neutral place. And they need to focus on educating the American public, educating the European public. The European leaders sold Europe out at the Barcelona Agreement in the 1990s. They took bribes to agree to allow unlimited Muslim illegal immigrants into Europe in order to break down the nation state and destroy ethnic solidarity in each of those countries. So for me, education is the key to peace and the key to prosperity. What I'm not seeing is Turkey, Iran, Russia, China, and others talking about how do you create public intelligence, public decision support, so that you can stop governments like the United States from being a rogue state that creates wars and terrorism because it's profitable for the banks. I am a loyal American citizen. I will never betray my country or my constitution.
Do you have any comment about Jordan or UAE specifically?
I believe that Jordan has been too accommodating to the United States of America. I believe that Jordan needs to understand that it's about to run out of water because the Israelis have stolen it. Jordan needs to drill down and block the Israeli pipe that is sucking all the water out of the Jordanian aquifer. They've been doing this for over 20 years. Jordan is about to run out of water because the Israelis have stolen it. I believe Egypt is going to be central to the future. I think that the Ottoman Empire, the Persian Empire, and the Egyptian Empire need to rise again. And they need to come together and create a rational plan for turning the Middle East into a paradise. The Dead Sea has already been brought back to life. We are growing figs and limes in the Dead Sea just by returning to natural agricultural patterns. There is no reason why there can't be unlimited desalinated water using free energy that resurrects Yemen and resurrects Somalia and turns the desert into a paradise. All we need is leaders with imagination, integrity, and intelligence. And that right now is a problem.
Thank you. Also, UAE, do you have any comment on UAE, United Arab Emirates?
I like the United Arab Emirates. I think they've got some really enlightened leaders. And I read a book once called City of Gold. There is just some really good stuff going on there, but they have one big, massive failure. They are not doing holistic analytics, true cost economics, and open source everything engineering. The investments that are being made by the leaders in the United Arab Emirates are investments into the old Western economic paradigm, which is broken. They need to invest in the open source everything engineering paradigm, which is 10% of the cost of the Western paradigm. For instance, a John Deere tractor is $250,000. An open source tractor is $25,000 and can be repaired in the field by the farmer. So I would like to see the UAE understand my ideas, which led to my being recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I would love to have a chance to visit the UAE and explain these ideas to a great university, which could have the kings and the leaders supporting it, and they could create an open source everything innovation center, which would then make the UAE a center for the new rise. I mean, the Library of Alexandria and all of these things that were great in the past, the Arabs can rise again.
And how do you think Japan stands in all of this?
I was brought to Japan to talk to some very decent people about cryptocurrency and about creating the next internet. I believe that Japan and China are now starting a new relationship, and I'm very excited by that. I believe that there is a possibility of a United States of Asia. And I'm very, very interested. I had discussions in Thailand with senior advisors to the King of Thailand, the new King of Thailand. And one of the things we've talked about is ASEAN nationalizing all of the central banks. The time has come to nationalize all central banks and put them in the service of the public, not the service of the Rothschilds and the Vatican and the Chabad Jews.
You mean the Asian banks now are under the control of those parties you mentioned?
The central banks of every country in the world are under the control of the Rothschilds, the Vatican, and the Chabad Jews. The leaders of these central banks are hand-picked and approved by the Rothschilds. The same is true of most bankers. For instance, the major leaders of Morgan Guarantee and Citibank and Goldman Sachs and so forth, these people are all approved by the Rothschilds, the Vatican, and the Chabad Jews. They are not elected. They are not selected on merit. They're selected on the basis of being loyal to the deep state.
Deep state inside where?
I have recently defined the difference between the deep state and the shadow government. People need to understand that the deep state is above governments. The deep state essentially consists of the Rothschilds and the Vatican, including both the Black Pope and the White Pope, as well as the Chabad Jews. They use the Freemasons and the Knights of Malta at the highest levels as their fixers, and they use world banks as their managers. Most governments have two parties that are elected by 30% of the public. The other 70% of the public is disenfranchised. The politicians and the military leaders and the bankers at the national level are the best of the servant class. They comprise the shadow government, but they are not the deep state. They are the servants of the deep state.
How do you think Japan stands in relation to the American bases and Okinawa and
Let me divide that into two parts. The first is, I believe that the era of secessionism is now here. I think Scotland will be independent of the Commonwealth of England. I believe Ireland and Barcelona, the Catalan region in Spain, I think secession is in the air. It is a natural right of people to declare their own government. And therefore, while I have no standing here, I respect the right of the Okinawan people to request independence. Let me say that I think the Okinawan people have been severely imposed on by turning Okinawa into an American military base. I served in Okinawa. I was in the Lima Company, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, with the current Commandant of the Marine Corps, Bob Neller. We need to get all of the U.S. military bases around the world closed. We need to end the vassal state status of Japan, Germany, and Italy, as well as Korea. We should close all of our military bases. We should bring all of our troops home. We need to rebuild America's military from the bottom up. Most people don't realize that the U.S. military today is 50% waste, 90% profit, and it cannot win wars. The United States military could not win a war against China or Japan today. It barely won a war in Iraq.
If United States leaves Japan and South Korea at least, China will fill the gap according to most analysis here, and Japan is very much concerned about the so-called expansion of China. Then don't you think the United States has a responsibility to maintain kind of balance in this region?
The United States has no responsibility and no obligation in Asia. The United States should be a respectful visitor in Asia. China and Japan will find their own way. Indonesia is going to be a major player going forward. Indonesia is the largest and richest Muslim nation on the planet. I see the ASEAN countries, less Singapore, which is an agent of the British Empire, I see the ASEAN countries developing a robust post-Western economic paradigm. China is not going to fill an American military gap. China has already beaten the United States strategically. That story is told in a book by my friend Parag Khanna called Connectography. While the United States has been buying a military that can't win war, China has been buying ports and roads and high-speed rail everywhere.
So China will be the next superpower in the area, basically, and doing same expansion, according to most reports.
Let me say that China already is the superpower, and China has been the superpower. Most people don't realize that the Chinese diaspora is the backbone of Asia.
More information about the diaspora, just for the viewers, please.
It was my privilege to grow up in Asia. I grew up in Vietnam as a child, in Thailand, in the Philippines, and Singapore. I've had many visits to Japan, which I've enjoyed tremendously. I've never been to China. I would like to go. What I have seen is that the Chinese diaspora, the Chinese people in every country in Asia, are the absolute essential unifying backbone for a United States of Asia, for a federation, or a confederacy, if you will, not a federation, not an imperial power, but rather a confederacy, where there are shared responsibilities. One of the things that needs to happen in the future, and I think China and Japan could lead in this area, people need to understand the true cost of goods. Right now, everything that is being created in China for sale in America is extraordinarily wasteful, including smartphones which kill Chinese people with leukemia. We need to move toward a sustainable economy that is local in nature. We need to get rid of the mega agriculture, mega pharmaceutical, mega mining. All of these very large foreign companies are simply raping and looting each of the countries in Asia. That needs to stop.
What do you mean by the banks controlling everything?
Okay. Let me say first that banks are a massive form of legalized crime. There is an excellent book by Matt Taibbi called Griftopia that talks about how banks basically create money out of thin air for the 1%. They just create $1 billion for themselves out of nothing. They just say, we have $1 billion, and everybody believes them. And then they lend this $1 billion to people and charge interest. So they're creating money and earning interest they don't deserve. Banks are a complete fraud. This is one of the reasons why I think cryptocurrency is going to do so well. It's also one of the reasons why I think governments need to understand cryptocurrency, because that's the alternative to fraudulent banking. Countries need to take responsibility for their currency. They should not be allowing the Rothschilds and the Vatican and the Chabad Jews to control their economy. As one very famous banker said one day, I don't care who makes the laws. If I manage the money, I'm making the laws.
You mentioned you were a spy, so could you just entertain us about some event?
Of course, you'd like me to spill my guts and tell you secrets. Let me tell you that I'm an old man. I have forgotten all the secrets, and I will never betray my country. I will, however, tell you that the two most important skills in spying are listening and typing. For every 1 hour of meeting, there is 4 hours of typing. Spying is a bureaucracy. Spying is also a fraud. The United States CIA doesn't know anything. In fact, when I created the Marine Corps Intelligence Command, I found out that the CIA didn't know anything about Burundi or Haiti or Somalia. That's when I created the discipline of open source intelligence. My most important soundbite back then was don't send a spy where a schoolboy can go. The problem with the CIA is it doesn't know anything. It actually relies on foreign liaison, the spy services of other countries, to give them stuff which they then pretend to have stolen. They don't know how to tell when other foreign services are lying to them. They don't really have a very effective decision support capability. They're more of a spending pool. One of the things that I've done is written 8 books, 2 of them with forwards by U.S. senators, talking about the future of intelligence. It's very important for publics to understand that intelligence properly done is about decision support, and 90% of decision support should rely on open sources and methods. I have a concept for an open source agency that I would like very much to be understood in Turkey and Iran, as well as Russia, China, and Japan. An open source agency allows a country to become a smart nation. President Putin has said he wants a post-Google internet by August of 2018. His Minister of Foreign Affairs has said that Russia wants to work with China to create a post-Western economic paradigm. I believe that 2018 is not only the beginning of the end of predatory capitalism, virtual colonialism, and unilateral militarism by the United States as an agent of the British Empire. I believe that 2018 is the beginning of universal access to knowledge that cannot be censored or manipulated. That's going to cause some dictators in Arabia a problem, but they can work with this. And I believe that we need to have Russia and China and Iran and Turkey and Egypt particularly engaged in a conversation. How do we create a post-Google internet? How do we create a post-Western economic paradigm in Arabia so that everybody has free energy and unlimited desalinated water and free education through a free internet with free cellular traffic? This is going to happen. The leaders that lead will benefit. The leaders that don't lead will be gone. I believe that Donald Trump was an accidentally elected president. He was elected because the crimes of Hillary Clinton became too obvious to the American public. And he wasn't ready to be president. It's taken him a year now. He's done some great things, but he's also been severely compromised by his generals, by his bankers. He has 9 Goldman Sachs bankers in the White House. This is insane. But Donald Trump, God bless him, is a disruptor. And everybody needs to understand that Donald Trump is much smarter and much more clever than people realize. I recently reviewed Fire and Fury, which is the book that seeks to show that Donald Trump is mentally unstable. That's absolutely not true. I reviewed other books that show that he is attentive to detail, that he is very disciplined, he is very personable. He knows what he's doing, but he is working. He is surrounded by the deep state in the White House and everywhere he goes. I believe that the future of peace and prosperity rests on educating the public and using open source everything engineering to bring the public up to a position of wealth at 10% of the cost of the Western paradigm. My name is Robert David Steele. You can find all of my ideas for free online at robertdavidsteele.com. I am available, but I only travel business class because I'm too large for economy.